So far with Retrospectives, I've covered the act of Doki Doki, as well as give light to Monika's character. I've covered how proper fan service and marketing has made Fire Emblem Heroes such a popular mobile gacha. And I've covered how the design elements of Ori and the Blind Forest combine to make a fantastic experience. Now it's time to cover World of Warcraft. I've been wanting to do this video for a while now, but there never really was a time for it. But now I've made the time. Plus it's only fitting, as the launch for Battle for Azeroth is just around the corner. You might be wondering what expansion in particular I'll be covering today, but that thought process is WRONG! No. What we'll be doing here today is covering all the expansions in one go. To give an idea, I'll be talking about what I believe are the 3 eras of WoW, and I'll be comparing them to one another. So let's not waste any more time and get started. As with all games, you need a beginning that hooks people in. Vanilla World of Warcraft did just that. Note that I did not start the game just yet, so I'll be going off of what I know from leveling, as well as what other people have said. This truly was the Wild West of WoW. Nobody really knew how to do anything, and it truly was a crazy time. Half the specs weren't viable, you needed 40 people to raid, battlegrounds didn't pop up for months, and leveling took much longer than it does now. Still, there were cool things that this chaos brought. Like class-specific quests, a whole world to explore that was only ever seen in an RTS trilogy, as well as many notable villains to defeat and obviously get loot from. With WoW Classic servers on the way, it'll be nice to see what it really was like at this level, as I only ever experienced what I had to level through and moved on. Then there's the Burning Crusade, which by many is considered the quintessential WoW expansion. This was also when I started playing, with my first character being a human warlock. We were given a brand new world to explore, and each area felt varied. From the hellish Hellfire Peninsula, the marshes of Zangar Marsh, the spiky peaks of Blade's Edge, and the relatively untouched paradise of Nagrand. They took the formula from vanilla and added onto it, fixing things that only needed to be fixed, like unviable specs. Suddenly, people started trying out specs or classes in ways that people didn't expect could be used. They also followed up with a storyline that people had been waiting to see for a while, and even added 2 new races, so that's cool. We end off with Wrath of the Lich King. If people weren't claiming TBC was the best and singing its praises, then they'd probably say Wrath was the best. I'm one of those people, as I mained a Death Knight up until Legion. The art of this MMO has been great to this point, for sure, but something about this expansion was just perfect. The boat ride to Howling Fjord is a memory that will always stick with me. Another thing to keep in mind is that this was the conclusion to a storyline many people had been waiting for years. It all ended with Arthas dead at our feet and the Scourge effectively contained. They even added a mini-raid in between the end of this expansion and the launch of the next one, so we weren't stuck at a content drought. Gee, that was a good idea. I wonder if they'll do another one of those. From start to finish, this expansion released so many goodies, and most of the class changes were great. Poor Paladins, though. 3 judgment spells? What were you thinking? This era is remembered fondly by many, probably due to the fact that this is where many had started their journeys. Vanilla to Wrath left people with many memories. From the many fantastic raids, dungeons, and battlegrounds to stuff like people running mixed builds like Elemental Mages, and older classics like
Dragons! Oh my god, he just ran in.
Of course, that's not to forget the crazier things like the Corrupted Blood incident and the Undead Invasion, which were studied by medical experts to compare how we'd react to a real-world epidemic. Let me reiterate for those of you in the back, they were incidents that were studied by medical experts. Told you, crazy times, but also good times. Those good times wouldn't last for too long, though. Starting with Cataclysm, the decline was gradual, both in terms of subscriptions and in terms of the general land as it was being destroyed. An unpopular opinion, but I still like Cataclysm to this day. But a fair amount of people would disagree with me. I enjoyed quite a bit out of it, like the addition of Gilneas and the Ferocious Worgen, as well as the Firelands raid. But some people felt this expansion just kind of fell on meh territory. It doesn't help then that they left the expansion off with a short and boring raid that lasted way too long. In fact, it was a 9-month-long content drought. There were other issues people had though. Some YouTubers at the time were WoW-centric. Is that a word? You know what? We'll just go with it. Some of these WoW-centric YouTubers criticized where the game was heading and decided to take their leave. Still, there was hope. This expansion still pulled a fair amount of subs, but it was still at a decline. And this was only the beginning. But then, Blizzard decided to do something different. They steered away from the typical lore and made something unique. What they settled on was pandas. You doing alright over there, Blitz? This expansion was weird, but not entirely bad either. But a lot of people just couldn't see past the pandas. Or how Garrosh suddenly 180'd from being an honorable orc to WoW's version of Hitler. Of course, Blizzard didn't learn from their mistakes, and they ended it with a raid that hung around a bit longer than it should have, like Dragon Soul prior. At least Siege of Orgrimmar was longer and had more interesting bosses. Except that goddamn goblin Blackfuse. I hate that bitch with a passion. Fuck you and fuck your conveyor belts. Once again, the amount of subscribers dropped lower and lower, proving that Blizzard's quality, like their populace, was on a steady decline. But hey, it's not like it could have gotten any worse, right? There's no way they could fuck up an expansion so bad that it alone could nearly kill WoW off entirely. Right?
Our bond is iron. Our will unbreakable. Who will stand against us?
God fucking damn it, Blizzard. This era ends with dumpster fire that's known as Warlords of Draenor. Or I guess you could say Snorelords of Draenor. Get it? Because it made people sleep instead of play. You know what? I'll just show myself out. Some will claim this expansion wasn't that bad. But that would be a fucking lie! Sure, they did a good job at making the leveling experience feel great, and the art was great too. But they ended up cutting so much content that they left us with the most bare-bones expansion that I've ever fucking seen. There was a Twitter integration and selfie patch and the end patch. That was it. 2 patches. I don't know what you were expecting. We had this expansion for a whole 2 years. The last raid lasted a whole year. What the fuck is this garbage? If you didn't hear me properly last time, let me say this again. We were stuck with that final raid for a fucking year. And it doesn't help that there was potential content that was scrapped. Like movable garrisons, capital cities that weren't Ashran. A whole zone was cut. Tanan Jungle was made into a patch when it should have been in the main game. And a suggested Shattrath Raid that would have balanced things out from all the fucking orcs. Speaking of which, Gromosh and his Iron Horde practically got off scot-free considering everyone cheers for him like a fucking hero. Even though he butchered several people and was the main villain for most of the expansion. Why is Hyrule okay with this? Why is Durotan okay with this? Why is anyone okay with this? Seriously, fuck that guy. This was when WoW had hit its lowest point, and things really weren't looking good. By this era, the game was at a decline. From the odd reception of Cata to the meh reception from Mists, cuz pandas, and the atrocity known as Warlords, things looked really grim for WoW. Not that this era didn't have positive memories for people like the last one did, but the frustrating changes, the long content droughts, and WoD in general didn't help whatsoever. Especially when they seemingly stopped listening to the fans and dismissed their concerns and requests. I don't think anyone could have forgotten this little instance.
Have you ever thought about adding servers for previous expansions as they were then?
No.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
People just wanted to play that game. But Blizzard is such dicks about it!
There's clearly a lot of people interested in the glory days.
I would pay additional money on top of my sub to access official vanilla servers.
You guys refuse to add your own servers. You refuse to do it. So Nostalrius does it.
You think you do, but you don't.
In essence, you could say the last era was the rise and that this era was the fall. But wait, I can hear you typing. The game isn't dead yet, though. You're right, but I wasn't claiming that it killed the game. This is more or less its fall from grace. It could have, but it didn't. The next era has a lot of expectations to meet. When Legion was announced, people looked to Blizzard expectantly. And boy did they deliver. Legion was packed to the brim with fan service, with the return of many fan-favorite lore characters like Bolvar, Valera,
Mr. Crowley,
and even Tyrion. For a couple of minutes, and then he just kinda dies, so that's a thing. Paladins have to get Ashbringer somehow. They also added one of the most anticipated hero classes to the game, Demon Hunters. It's funny too, as there have been more Demon Hunters popping up over the period of Legion than there's been monks ever since Mists launched. Can't really separate them from the pandas. Kinda sad. There's also the revival of class identity, with each spec being made different from one another, and each class having a unique story, except priests, so that part kinda sucks, I guess. They even expanded on the good things from Warlords, being the art and storytelling, and made them even better. At the end of the expansion, we even put an end to Sargeras' schemes, which is important, seeing as he and the Burning Legion were the main big bad of Warcraft for years. Essentially, Legion put WoW back onto a rise that it desperately needed. Hell, you could probably say that it revived the player base. Huh? No? You wouldn't say that. That joke was dumb? Oh. If this had been another WoD level expansion, this game would not have survived. I'm certain on that. However, Legion was exactly what a lot of people wanted from the game. Next up is Battle for Azeroth, which I can't say too much about as it's not quite released yet. However, I have played the beta, and from what I can tell, it's around the same level that Legion was. From what I can gather, they took what they learned from Legion and expanded on it. A good example of this is the Class Hall campaign's idea being incorporated into 2 separate faction stories. Plus, you've got allied races, which adds a spin to races that we already have. Lightforged Draenor, High Mountain Tauren, and Nightborne offer players some groups that we met in Legion that people wanted to see playable. There's fan favorites like Maghar Orcs, Dark Iron Dwarves, and Zandalari Trolls that people have wanted for ages. There's also a new variation of humans with the Kultirans as well as Void Elves, which is pretty much the closest we'll get to High Elves at this point, and I'm kind of okay with that. There's also speculation on some potential allied races that are involved in Battle for Azeroth, but 1, it's all just speculation right now, and 2, I don't really want to spoil it for some people. Except for some YouTubers who make those their thumbnails, you know, that, because that's not going to spoil it for people. Jokes aside, it seems like the Void is going to be playing a major part in this expansion, from its involvement with each of the allied races' stories, to whatever is going on within Uldir, and the announcement that we'll be fighting Queen Ajara eventually. It makes you wonder what they have to gain from the faction conflict, and if we're going to be directly dealing with them in the near future. We can only speculate, as we don't know what the future holds, but if they continue to build off what Legion has provided, then the future for WoW looks promising. As long as Blizzard doesn't steer us towards another disaster level expansion like WoD, then we should be fine. Legion was a good example of bringing us back to the level of classic era WoW. And from what I can tell, BFA aims to outdo even Legion. This era looks promising, and I can't wait to see what more Blizzard has in store for us in the future. With Sargeras defeated, a faction conflict on the rise, the Light seeming to be as manipulative as the Void, and the minions of the Void Lords scheming, it would seem Azeroth's future is a grim one. And like most other players, I wouldn't have it any other way. Jeez, that's kind of fucked up, isn't it? We've seen the rise of a new MMORPG, its fall from grace and near death, and we're currently witnessing its revival. I've played for many years, and witnessed much of this firsthand, but vanilla of course, and it's been with me most of my life. Think about it. The game is 15 years old and they're still finding ways to keep the ball rolling. Even if those ideas fail sometimes. Warlords! It's formed many memories over time. I think this will be the last retrospective for a while. I aim to make this more of a seasonal series, so maybe 1 episode every 3 months. These do take quite a lot of time to make, so I don't want to throw too much work onto my plate. Either way, I hope you all have enjoyed GB Retrospectives so far. I plan to have another one out for the winter. As for other videos, you'll just have to wait and see. So until then, Goldenbrawler out.